When Michael Carter walked into Louis' high-end restaurant, all he wanted was a chance to prove his talent in the kitchen. Instead, he was met with sneers, insults, and a humiliating dismissal from the arrogant owner. But what Louis didn't know was that the man he shamed would soon become his greatest regret. Michael wasn't just any chef, he was a visionary, and he was about to turn the tables in a way no one saw coming. The kitchen hummed with energy as Michael Carter flipped a sizzling pan, the rich aroma of caramelized onions and thyme filling the air. His hands moved with precision, crafting dishes that looked like art. Michael, in his late 20s, had spent years honing his craft, often working long shifts in the shadows of chefs who received more recognition, but rarely matched his talent. His love for food was born in his grandmother's kitchen, where soulful meals brought the family together. Cooking isn't just about flavor, she had once told him. It's about creating joy. Those words became his mantra. Michael wasn't just another cook. He had dreams that went beyond the confines of the line cooking station. Late at night, after finishing his grueling shifts, he'd sit at a small table in his modest apartment, sketching out recipes and envisioning a restaurant where everyone, regardless of their background, felt welcome. His notebooks were filled with ideas, blending the comfort of soul food with the sophistication of fine dining. But working under Louis Grayson, the arrogant owner of the high-end eatery, felt like a constant uphill climb. The restaurant itself was a shrine to exclusivity. Chandeliers sparkled above polished floors, and the clientele dressed to impress, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. It was a space where Michael's talent should have shone brightly, but Louis had other ideas. Louis, a man in his 50s with a perpetual smirk, never missed a chance to remind Michael of his place. To Louis, Michael wasn't an asset. He was a background player, good enough to keep the kitchen running, but not worth promoting or acknowledging. "Carter," Louis barked one evening, stepping into the kitchen during a particularly busy dinner service. "What's taking so long on that scallop dish? If you can't keep up, there are plenty of others who can." The snide remark echoed through the kitchen, but Michael kept his head down, refusing to let Louis see how deeply it stung. He knew he was faster and more skilled than anyone else there, but in Louis's eyes, he'd never be enough. Despite the belittling comments and dismissive tone, Michael poured himself into his work. Each dish that left his station was a quiet rebellion, a testament to his talent and determination. His co-workers respected him, often sneaking glances at his creations with admiration. But respect wasn't enough. Michael wanted recognition, not for vanity, but to prove that his grandmother's belief in him hadn't been misplaced. As Michael finished plating a dish, a co-worker whispered, "Man, your food deserves its own restaurant." Michael smiled faintly, hiding the ache in his chest. Deep down, he knew the truth. Louis would never let someone like him rise to the top. Still, Michael didn't complain. He didn't argue. He let his cooking speak for him, holding on to the belief that one day, his passion would take him further than Louis ever imagined. The restaurant was bustling that Friday evening, the clinking of wine glasses blending with the soft hum of conversations. Michael worked quietly in the kitchen, meticulously crafting the dishes that would soon grace the pristine tables of the wealthy clientele. He had perfected a new sauce for the evening's special, a tangy, velvety blend of citrus and herbs that danced on the palate. The head chef, usually cold and indifferent, had begrudgingly nodded in approval after tasting it. Michael's focus was interrupted when Louis Grayson strutted into the kitchen. Dressed in his signature tailored suit, the owner carried an air of arrogance that filled the space like a bad odor. He had his sights set on Michael, a sneer tugging at his lips. "Carter!" Louis barked, his voice cutting through the chaos of the kitchen. "What are you doing messing with tonight's special? I didn't hire you to experiment." Michael turned calmly, wiping his hands on his apron. "I thought it would elevate the dish, Mr. Grayson. Guests seemed to like the new sauce last week during the tasting." Louis scoffed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You thought? Listen, Carter, this isn't some backyard cookout. This is fine dining, and people don't come here for whatever it is you people think works." The room went silent. Pans stopped clanging, and all eyes darted between Michael and Louis. The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting, as the tension thickened. Michael clenched his jaw, but his composure didn't falter. "I understand, sir," he replied evenly, his tone steady despite the storm brewing in his chest. "But if you'd like me to change it, I will." Louis leaned closer, his smirk widening. "Of course you will. You don't get paid to think. You get paid to follow orders." A murmur rippled through the staff, some exchanging uneasy glances while others looked away. unwilling to get involved. Michael felt the sting of humiliation, but he refused to let Louis see him break. Not here. Not like this. Just as Michael turned back to the stove, a waitress entered the kitchen, nervously holding a plate. "Mr. Grayson," she stammered. "The guests at table 7 asked to meet the chef who made their dish. They said it was the best meal they've ever had." Louis's face twitched with irritation, but he quickly covered it with his fake charm. "I'll take care of it," he said, grabbing the plate. He turned back to Michael, sneering. "See, Carter? That's how you handle success. With grace, not ego." As Louis walked out, Michael stood frozen, the weight of the encounter pressing down on him. The people in the kitchen whispered among themselves, but no one dared to speak up. Later that evening, as Michael prepared to leave, he overheard Louis bragging in the dining area. "All this success comes down to leadership," he was saying, his voice oozing with smugness. "My vision is what keeps this place on top." Michael slipped out the back door, his apron folded neatly in his hands. The cool night air hit him, but it did little to soothe the heat of anger bubbling beneath his calm exterior. He thought of his grandmother's words. "It's not what they say about you, it's what you prove to yourself." As he walked home, Michael made a silent vow. This wouldn't be the end of his story, not by a long shot. Michael slammed the door to his small apartment, his frustration boiling over. "How long am I supposed to keep swallowing my pride?" he vented to his best friend Jordan. Jordan, always the calm strategist, leaned back in the worn-out chair in Michael's kitchen. "You've got too much talent to let that man define you," he said, his voice firm but encouraging. "You're better than that place, Mike, and you know it." Jordan's words stayed with Michael. That night, as he stared at his recipe notebook, a notification popped up on his phone. "Local food competition, big cash prize and investor opportunities." His pulse quickened. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was his way out. The next morning, Michael made up his mind. If he was going to leave behind Louis's toxic shadow, he needed to fight for it. He began pouring every ounce of energy into perfecting his signature dish, a twist on Southern soul food that paid homage to his roots while showcasing his creativity. The apartment filled with the aroma of collard greens, smoked spices, and caramelized sweetness as Michael tested, tweaked, and perfected. His mother, visiting to check on him, tasted one bite and smiled through teary eyes. "You've got something special here," she said. "Your father would be proud." Days turned into sleepless nights. Michael pushed through exhaustion, driven by the vision of something bigger than himself. By the time competition day arrived, he was ready. The hall buzzed with energy as chefs in crisp uniforms arranged their stations. Michael, in his simple apron, stood out, but he didn't let the stares rattle him. His hands moved with precision, every ingredient telling a story. When the judges tasted his dish, the room fell silent. A renowned critic whispered, This is genius." Then came the applause, slow at first, then building into a standing ovation. Michael's heart raced as they announced the winner. It was him. The trophy was heavy in his hands, but the victory felt even weightier. After the ceremony, Michael was approached by several investors who had watched in awe. One of them, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, said, "You have what it takes to go far. Let's talk about helping you build something big." Michael felt a surge of hope. This wasn't just a win, it was a turning point. That night, as he sat with Jordan, holding the check and a list of investor contacts, Michael knew his journey had only begun. "This is it," Jordan said, clapping him on the back. "Time to show the world what you're made of." Michael nodded, a smile spreading across his face. He was no longer just a chef working under someone else's rules. He was creating a path of his own, one dish at a time. Michael stood in the kitchen of his small apartment, staring at the check from the competition. The paper trembled slightly in his hands. "This is it," he murmured to himself, both nervous and exhilarated. Jordan leaned on the counter beside him, grinning ear to ear. "Now we build something real," Jordan said. "But you've got to think big, Mike. Bigger than catering gigs or side hustles. I'm talking legacy." The idea brewed in Michael's mind as he started catering small events to raise his profile. Word spread quickly about his gourmet take on soul food. His dishes combined the nostalgia of home-cooked meals with the elegance of fine dining. Photos of his creations, succulent fried chicken on creamy polenta, candied yams with a delicate glaze, cornbread soufflés, lit up social media. Orders rolled in faster than he could fill them. I can't keep doing this alone, Michael admitted one evening, exhaustion clear in his voice. Jordan handed him a tablet, showing him a local business report. You won't have to. Lewis is in trouble. Michael's eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean? Jordan smirked, tapping the screen. Sales at Lewis's restaurant are tanking. Customers are complaining about the food and his attitude. Rumor has it he's looking to sell. Michael's heart skipped. The thought of taking over the very place where he had been humiliated was almost poetic. Still, doubt lingered. Do you think I could really run a restaurant? You're already doing it, Jordan replied. This could be your chance to show everyone, Louis included, what you're capable of. The next day, Michael drove by the restaurant. The once bustling patio was now nearly empty. Inside, he spotted Louis pacing near the register, his usual smugness replaced with irritation. A small, satisfied smile crept across Michael's face. With Jordan's help, Michael set up a meeting with his investors. Louis's restaurant is in trouble, he explained. If we act now, we can take it over at a discount. The investors listened intently as Michael outlined his vision for the space, a place where fine dining met community warmth. By the time the meeting ended, they were on board. Negotiations began quietly. Michael kept his involvement under wraps, communicating through a third party. Louis, desperate to escape his mounting debts, jumped at the offer. They won't last 6 months in this place, Louis sneered to himself as he signed the papers. The deal closed within weeks. Michael's hands trembled slightly as he held the keys to the restaurant. Jordan clapped him on the back, laughing. This is it, man. You just bought the place that tried to break you. For Michael, the moment was more than a victory. It was a chance for transformation. The restaurant wouldn't just be a business, it would be a symbol of resilience and redemption. Louis leaned back in his office chair, smug as ever, flipping through the final sale documents. For weeks, he had been eager to unload the restaurant. Its failure wasn't his fault, he told himself. It was the ungrateful customers and lazy staff. Now, with the sale finalized, he was free to wash his hands of the place. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called, assuming it was the buyer's lawyer or some other faceless figure. Instead, Michael stepped in, his shoulders squared and his expression calm. Louis blinked. What the hell are you doing here? Michael walked slowly to the desk, setting a leather-bound folder on top of the documents Louis had been reviewing. I'm here because this place is mine now. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Louis stammered, his face turning a deep shade of red. Yours? That's impossible. You can't afford... Michael cut him off, his voice steady and sharp. You signed the papers, Louis. It's done. The restaurant, the name, everything. It belongs to me now. Louis leaned back, his sneer faltering. So what? You think you're better than me now? You think you can run this place? Michael tilted his head, his tone soft but unwavering. No, I don't think. I know. And I'll do it with respect. Something this place hasn't seen in a long time. The door opened again, and several of the restaurant staff entered. Most of them had been anxiously waiting for news about the sale. When they saw Michael standing tall and Louis fuming, the pieces quickly fell into place. You're the new owner? One of the servers asked, her voice tinged with hope. Michael nodded. I am, and I want all of you to know your jobs are safe. The past is behind us. From here on out, this restaurant is going to be a place of growth and creativity. We're starting fresh. The room buzzed with whispers and cautious optimism. Louis, meanwhile, stood up, his face twisted with disbelief. You'll regret this, he spat, gathering his belongings. Michael didn't flinch. Maybe, he replied, but at least I'll do it with integrity, something you wouldn't understand. As Louis stormed out, Michael turned to the staff. I won't pretend this will be easy, but I promise you this. I'm committed to making this place something we can all be proud of. It's not just about food. It's about creating an experience that brings people together. The weight of his words sank in. Slowly, the tension in the room lifted. A cook stepped forward, extending his hand. I'm with you, he said. Me too, a server chimed in. Michael smiled, shaking their hands. Then let's get to work. That evening, Michael posted on social media, sharing the news of his ownership. This isn't just my win, he wrote. It's a chance to prove that respect and passion can transform anything. Thank you to everyone who believed in me. Within hours, the post went viral. Comments poured in from supporters, food bloggers, and even former customers of Lewis's restaurant, all eager to see what Michael would do next. The next morning, Michael stood outside the restaurant, gazing up at the familiar building. The worn sign above the door read, Louis' Fine Dining, its faded letters a reminder of the past. Michael knew it would take more than a new menu to wipe away the place's tarnished reputation. It needed a complete transformation, inside and out. He pushed open the doors and walked in, clipboard in hand. The staff was already gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and nerves. Michael placed the clipboard on the counter and took a deep breath. Let's talk about the future, he began. Eyes shifted and a few murmurs rippled through the room. Michael continued, his tone calm yet firm. This restaurant has been running on fear and arrogance for too long. That ends today. From now on, this will be a place of respect, creativity, and opportunity. We're building something people will be proud to visit and work for. A brave server raised her hand. Does that mean we're all staying? Michael smiled. Yes, if you're willing to work with me. No one here is disposable. You're part of the team, and I'll do my best to support you. But I expect the same commitment in return. The room buzzed with cautious optimism. For many, this was the first time anyone in leadership had spoken to them as equals. Michael wasted no time in getting to work. Contractors arrived later that week to start the renovations. The sterile, cold interior of the restaurant was stripped away, replaced with warm earth tones, wooden accents, and soft lighting. At the center of the dining area, Michael commissioned a mural, an explosion of colors and cultural imagery that paid homage to his roots. The artist, a local talent, incorporated symbols of resilience, community, and culinary creativity. It was more than decoration, it was a statement of purpose. Michael also focused on the kitchen. Equipment was upgraded, and the layout was restructured to create a more efficient and collaborative workspace. Chefs and cooks who had endured years of Louis's micromanagement were shocked to find Michael asking for their input. What do you need to do your best work? He asked one of the sous chefs, who blinked in surprise before listing off ideas. Michael listened intently, jotting everything down. The menu was the soul of the restaurant, and Michael wanted it to tell a story. He scrapped the outdated dishes that lacked identity and replaced them with creations that reflected his journey. The new menu was a mix of soul food and global influences, combining traditional flavors with modern techniques. His signature dish, the one that won him the competition, became the centerpiece, a plate that represented hope, heritage, and bold ambition. To ensure accessibility, Michael introduced community nights, offering discounted meals for families and individuals who couldn't normally afford fine dining. It wasn't just about food, it was about creating an experience everyone could enjoy. Michael knew the restaurant couldn't thrive without the support of the neighborhood. He opened the doors to local chefs, artists, and culinary students, inviting them to share their ideas and talents. A community launch event was planned, featuring cooking demonstrations, live music, and free samples of the new menu. Flyers were handed out, and social media buzzed with excitement. Carter's Table, as the restaurant was now called, was quickly becoming a symbol of hope and change. Winning over the staff was just as important as winning over the community. Michael held weekly team meetings where everyone was encouraged to share their thoughts and ideas. He provided training sessions on customer service and culinary techniques, empowering his team to grow alongside the restaurant. One server, who had been quiet and withdrawn under Lewis's rule, surprised everyone during a meeting. I think we should create a special dish for kids, she suggested. Michael nodded, giving her the green light to experiment. A few weeks later, her creation became one of the most popular items on the menu. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was cultural. The staff began to smile more, work together more, and even take pride in wearing the restaurant's new uniforms, which featured the tagline, "Where passion meets purpose." The restaurant's soft opening was a resounding success. Guests raved about the food, the atmosphere, and the energy of the place. Local food bloggers praised Michael's vision, calling it a bold and necessary reinvention. Michael stood near the entrance that night, watching customers laugh, share meals, and take photos of the mural. His heart swelled with pride. This wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a beacon of possibility. The buzz around Carter's table grew louder with each passing day. Within weeks, the restaurant had become the talk of the town, drawing in critics, food bloggers, and curious diners eager to experience Michael's vision firsthand. The once toxic atmosphere was now replaced by warmth, laughter, and the tantalizing aroma of soulful dishes. Michael worked tirelessly alongside his team, ensuring that every detail reflected the values of respect and creativity that had built this new era. The first major review came from Gastronome Weekly, a prestigious food magazine known for its sharp critiques. The headline read, "Carter's Table, a culinary revolution rooted in heart." The article raved about the menu, praising its ability to balance tradition with innovation, and commended Michael's efforts to turn the restaurant into a symbol of change. The words were glowing, but it was the final line that hit hardest. Carter's Table isn't just a restaurant. It's proof that passion and purpose can change the world. Michael read it aloud to his mother, his voice catching on the last word. As the restaurant flourished, Michael made sure not to forget the people who had been with him since the beginning. He held weekly appreciation dinners for his staff, where he personally thanked each of them for their contributions. The transformation in the team was palpable. Employees who had once worked in fear now wore smiles that were genuine. They spoke up with ideas, supported one another, and embraced the restaurant as if it were their own. Michael's mentorship extended beyond the workplace, offering guidance to those who sought to grow in their careers. The community also felt the impact of Carter's Table. Michael hosted free dinners for low-income families every month, ensuring that the restaurant remained a place for everyone, not just those who could afford fine dining. On one of these nights, a young girl approached Michael, holding her plate of food with a shy smile. "My mom says you're a hero," she said softly. Michael crouched down, his heart swelling. "Tell your mom I said thank you," he replied, his voice steady, though his eyes glistened. Not everyone, however, embraced Michael's success. Lewis, the former owner, couldn't stand the sight of Carter's Table thriving under Michael's leadership. He made bitter remarks to local reporters, accusing Michael of stealing his spotlight and claiming the restaurant's success was built on his legacy. But the public wasn't buying it. Comments on social media quickly turned against Louis, with people defending Michael's hard work and sharing stories of how Carter's Table had positively impacted the community. Michael refused to engage in public feuds. When asked about Lewis's comments during an interview, he simply said, "Everyone's entitled to their perspective. My focus is on creating something meaningful." The class and restraint in his response only strengthened his reputation. As Carter's Table continued to draw attention, Michael found himself busier than ever, juggling the demands of running a restaurant, mentoring his team, and staying connected to the community. Despite the pressure, he remained grounded, often pausing to remind himself of how far he had come. During quiet moments, he would walk into the restaurant's kitchen after hours, leaning against the counter and letting the hum of the refrigerator fill the silence. It was in these moments that he allowed himself to reflect. One evening, a former critic who had once scoffed at Michael's skills visited the restaurant unannounced. The critic, a well-known figure in the food world, quietly dined in a corner, savoring each dish without drawing attention. At the end of the meal, they approached Michael. "You've done something extraordinary here," they admitted, their tone sincere. "I was wrong about you." Michael simply smiled. "It's not about being right or wrong," he replied. "It's about learning and growing." The evening culminated in a gesture that defined everything Carter's Table had become. Michael invited his staff to join the dining room, where he raised a glass and addressed the guests. "This place," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion, "isn't just about food. It's about people. It's about turning challenges into opportunities and proving that kindness and hard work can change lives. Thank you for being part of this journey." The room erupted into applause, with staff and guests alike cheering. Michael stood at the center of it all, humbled but proud. This wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a movement, a legacy built on resilience, passion, and the belief that everyone deserved a seat at the table. The sun cast a golden glow over the newly renovated Carter's table as Michael stood outside, watching the first guests of the day arrive. The sign above the door gleamed, its simple yet powerful tagline reading, "Where passion meets purpose." This wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a beacon of hope and resilience. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Guests were greeted by smiling staff who radiated a sense of pride. The once chaotic workplace had transformed into a family, bound together by mutual respect and a shared vision. Michael had turned the restaurant into a reflection of his own journey, a space where people, no matter their background, felt welcomed and valued. In the months since Michael took ownership, Carter's Table had become more than a fine dining destination. It was a hub for community growth. Michael launched a mentorship program, inviting aspiring chefs from marginalized communities to learn and work alongside his team. These young chefs brought their unique flavors and techniques, enriching the menu and furthering the restaurant's mission of inclusivity. One of the mentees, a shy teenager named Lila, had been hesitant when she first joined. She was skilled but lacked confidence, often second-guessing her every move. Michael noticed her struggle and made it a point to encourage her. "Every great chef starts with self-doubt," he told her one afternoon, "but passion and practice turn that doubt into something extraordinary." A few weeks later, Lila's dish, a bold fusion of Caribbean and French cuisine, made its way onto the menu. Seeing her name printed beneath the description brought tears to her eyes. The restaurant's impact didn't stop with its employees. Michael hosted quarterly community events, including free cooking classes for families, fundraisers for local schools, and donation drives for food banks. During one such event, a single mother approached Michael, holding her young son's hand. "You've shown us what's possible," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for believing in people like us." Michael shook her hand, his throat tight with emotion. "I wouldn't be here without others believing in me," he replied. As Carter's Table thrived, Michael found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. In a heartfelt interview with a local magazine, he spoke about the challenges he'd faced. "Success isn't about proving people wrong," he said. "It's about proving yourself right. It's about staying true to your values, even when others try to tear you down." The article went viral, inspiring countless readers who saw their own struggles mirrored in Michael's story. Louis, the restaurant's former owner, was no longer a looming shadow in Michael's life. His attempts to tarnish Michael's reputation had backfired spectacularly, with the public rallying behind Michael's hard-earned success. One day, Louis walked into the restaurant unannounced. He looked around, taking in the renovations and the joyful atmosphere. When he saw Michael, he hesitated before extending his hand. "You've done well," he admitted, his voice lacking the usual arrogance. Michael shook his hand but didn't dwell on the moment. He'd long since moved past needing Louis's approval. The story of Carter's Table continued to grow, drawing attention from food critics, entrepreneurs, and even celebrities. But for Michael, the real victory was in the little moments. Seeing his staff thrive, watching a customer's face light up after their first bite, and knowing that his restaurant had become a symbol of hope for the community. One evening, Michael hosted a grand dinner to celebrate the restaurant's anniversary. The dining room was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the aroma of dishes that told stories of resilience and creativity. Michael's mother sat at a table near the kitchen, beaming with pride. At the end of the night, Michael stood before the crowd, raising a glass. "Carter's Table wouldn't be here without every one of you," he said. "This place isn't just mine, it's ours. It's proof that when we work together, we can turn any challenge into an opportunity." As the guests applauded, Michael stepped outside to catch his breath. The night air was cool, carrying the distant hum of the city. He looked up at the sign above the door, his heart swelling with gratitude. He'd built something lasting, not just a restaurant, but a legacy of respect, resilience, and community.